Philippians 1:12-14. I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner, for reading scripture. So before I get into that scripture, and we're going to work our way through it, I want to start by reminding you of a passage from the Old Testament, Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 10. It says, "The joy of the Lord is your strength." Have we got that slide? Maybe not. Can you remember that much? The joy of the Lord is your strength. Would you say that to somebody around you? Say, I want it in there, all right? So say, the joy of the Lord is your strength. Okay, that's right. You need to hear that again and again and again, because the joy of the Lord is your strength. So if we have an enemy who wants to make us weak, and we do, how is he going to do that? If the joy of the Lord is our strength, what's he going to do to make us weak? He's going to attack our joy. He's going to go after our joy. That's why I like so much this sermon series, Road to Joy. By the way, haven't Wes and Chad done a spectacular job in these sermons leading up to this place? Yeah, it's been so good and so wonderful. And so I just want us to recognize that we have an enemy who wants to steal our joy, and he's really good at it. He is skilled. He's been doing it for centuries, for millennia. He is really, really good at it, and he wants to steal your joy, and he wants to steal my joy, and he's effective. And it seems like and he does it by throwing problems at us. You know, he throws problems at us to try to steal our joy, stuff that makes us worry and sweat and be upset and concerned. And I don't know that I can ever remember a time in my life when I didn't have some kind of problem that I had to think about. You know, and it might be financial, or it might be something wrong with the house, it might be in the family, it might be health, it might be the water heater went out and we don't have money for, you know, there's just always something somewhere that he's using to try and attack our joy. Because if he can make us lose our joy, we lose our strength and we're weak and we're vulnerable then. I have many, many problems. I had a problem about 30 years ago that almost took my faith. It almost cost me my relationship with the Lord. He's just that good at it. So today in Philippians, Paul is going to show us an entirely different way to look at our problems. He's going to show us to change our perspective from looking at the what the problem is, or the what of the problem, and look instead at the why the problem. Why is this problem here? Not so much, because you and I are prone to focus on the what. Oh man, my kid's in trouble. What am I going to do about that? The oven broke and we don't have money to get a new oven. The kids are having trouble at school, or I've got a health. We focus on the what. And when we focus on the what, we start to lose our joy, and then we lose our strength. That's the same thing. So Paul is saying, fix your eyes on the why. Fix your eyes on the why of the problem, not the what of the problem. Because when we fix our eyes on the what, usually what happens to us is we get fearful, we get anxiety, we do something rash or irrational, and we do something stupid, and the result of that problem is magnified. But when we focus on the why, like Paul shows us how, that changes. The result changes. When we quit focusing on the what and start focusing on the why, that is a win for us. Fixing on the why reminds us that it's possible that this problem can have a good ending. That could be the why. It's no fun getting there. And it could be a long time getting there, but it could have a good ending. In fact, the problem can actually bring us more joy. The problem can glorify our God, and we're going to see all of that as we go through this text today. in God's hands, even a problem can lead to joy. Oh, do you guys believe that? I didn't know if you'd believe that or not. I just said it. Okay. Even a problem can lead to joy. So when we were expecting our first child, right after church one Sunday, my wife started having contractions. That was my wife, by the way, that read scripture for us. She started having contractions, and we're all excited about it. It's our first baby, and we're just young and dumb, and this is going to be so fun. And so we go to the hospital, and on the way there, they're getting worse. It's like 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the afternoon, and the contractions are getting worse, and the pain's getting worse. And we finally get to the hospital, and they're worse, and there's all the business stuff you got to do. We finally get settled into the birthing room, and we're ready to do this thing, and we're especially ready because we took Lamaze classes. We took, for 2 months, we took Lamaze classes. And if you don't know what Lamaze classes are, these are classes where the pregnant woman learns how to breathe and exercise things that will keep her from having pain in childbirth. And the husband is the guy that learns how to coach the woman through this. And so we're going to do that, natural childbirth, and we're going to have a pain-free. There's going to be some pressure, we were told, but not pain. So my job, I had a tennis ball, and my job was to rub her back in just the right way, and that would relieve any discomfort. And when the contractions came, she had this breathing exercise, and I would help her with that by getting in her face and say, go, and that gets you through the contraction without pain. I think you've already learned that we were lied to. Yeah. And we did believe it. And it was horrible. I mean, we went through the afternoon, and it got worse, and the pain was awful, and he's and hoo-hoos and tennis balls weren't helping any of it. And she's just in so much pain, and it gets worse. We go into the evening, and then it's midnight, and we're still at this. And then it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's worse. And neither one of us have slept since the night before. It's like 30 hours since we've been asleep. And it's just so hard and painful and difficult. And we go into the next morning, and then it's noon again, and finally we have the baby. And it was an incredible moment. I mean, an absolutely incredible moment. We had this baby girl, and Mandy was cute and fun. She still is cute and fun, and just brought us so much joy. It was such a terrific thing. Beautiful, beautiful thing. And we had realized this problem that we were going through, all this pain, was the what. And that's awful when you focus on the what. But then when you realize the why, there's joy. You following this? You see, there's pain and difficulty and trial, and then there is joy. And so what Paul is encouraging us to do is to focus on the why rather than on all the what. And so it actually, it was a little bit crazier even after Mandy was born. There were some complications and procedures and surgeries and all that's going on in the hospital room with us, and there's hours that I'm just holding this baby and I'm worried about my wife and all those kind of things. And everything's fine eventually. And I went up to her and I said 3 things. I said, "You are amazing. You tell me anything you want and I'll find a way to get it. I don't care what it is." And I said, "Third, we are never going through this again." And we didn't for 2 years. And 2 years after that, and 4 years after that. But you know what the difference was between those last 3? We knew the why, exactly. And I mean, the what was very real, but we weren't like crying and sick and, oh my gosh, what's going on, because we knew the what. And it wasn't the best part of this whole thing. The why was. And so if you can, this is what Paul is trying to teach us, church. If we can focus on the why, and you may not know what it is. We didn't the first time. And after you get a few of these in your life, you'll do the same thing. Oh, this is going on, and this is hard, and this is difficult. But there is a why that God has in mind for us. That's what we need to learn. So Paul is given this massive task. Take the gospel of Jesus to the whole world. What a massive task he's given. Tell the world about Jesus. And he does it, and he's terrific at it. He's the most prolific missionary ever in history. And he is going through Europe, and he's going through Asia Minor, and he goes into a town, and he tells them about Jesus. And now he had this advantage. There's a lot of miracles going on, and people right away, whoa, this is the real deal. And they have some believers, and he says, okay, we got a church. Boom, I'm going to the next town. We got a church. Boom, next town. And he's in Colossae, and Ephesus, and Philippi, and Corinth, and Thessalonica, and all these places. And he's starting these churches. And he's just prolific at it, very, very good at it. But that means to accomplish that, Paul has to travel a lot. He travels all the time, starting these churches. But now Paul has a big problem when we are in the book of Philippians. He's in prison. He's in chains. He is attached to a Roman guard 24/7. He's chained to him. And so Paul can choose to fix his eyes on the what? What is going on here? God, you gave me this job, and now look what you've done to me. I can't even get out of this room. How can I go into all the world? I just got to sit in this room, and you got me chained to this heathen Roman, and I'm just waiting on the Roman judge to decide my fate. Paul can focus on the what, or Paul can focus on the why. Guess what he does? He focuses on the why. And that's what I want us to talk about today. So if you're writing something in your book, here are some things. I like this. I've never noticed this before, but the first thing he does is defang the problem. You know what I mean by that? He just takes the teeth out of it. This is a bad problem, and this is a big problem. This is going to keep him from accomplishing what he is meant to accomplish, and he can't do it. But that's not how Paul sees this. This blows me away. All that's going on with him, he says, this is how he names it. I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me. That's it. All he says about this incredible mess that he's in, these chains that he's in, this jail time is a big problem. I guess I don't know that firsthand. Maybe some of you do. That's a big problem. And Paul's like, what happened to me? And he doesn't complain about it. He doesn't. I'm telling you what, if I'm writing to these guys, I'm saying, you guys aren't going to believe what God did to me. I got this mess that I'm in the middle of. But that's not where Paul goes. That's focusing on the what. Paul focuses on the why. He just says, I'll tell you what happened to me. What happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. He doesn't say, you're not going to believe what happened to me. I'm a wreck. I can't stand it anymore. I'm stuck in this place. These people are driving me crazy. I don't have any good food. He says, you know what? This is all going on. It's a what, but that what has this why on the end of it. It's advancing the gospel. And Paul is amped up about that. You and I will look at that and say, man, you crazy, Paul. How can you advance the gospel in prison? They don't have online services or email. You're stuck in that room. Well, we'll see. He evangelizes, he disciples, and he encourages billions of people by writing letters from prison. He starts writing letters back to all these baby churches. And he encourages them, and he disciples them, and he evangelizes people, and he teaches them, and he makes corrections in some of their mistaken thoughts and theology and all that kind of stuff. He's writing letters to all these people. So why number one is, well, you know what? You and I are living why number one. Right now, you and I are being blessed and encouraged through this whole Philippians series, and we're only in one chapter. We are being blessed and encouraged through this whole series. You know why? Because of Paul's what? He's stuck in prison. And think about how many millions and billions of people over 2,000 years have also been encouraged and blessed and taught and changed and found Christ because of Paul's problem. If we focus on the why, this is a terrible thing for Paul. But when we are on the why, if we focus on the why, look what God did with it. And I want you to know that same God does the same kind of things with our problems when we are his children. He has a why. He has a purpose. And listen, I don't want to belittle hard stuff you guys go through, that I go through. I don't want to belittle it at all. Painful, hard things. And some of this stuff, we are not going to see the why till we're on the other side. And I'll just say this, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I don't know how many years I have left here, and I don't care. I'm okay with that because I got a whole lot more on the other side. That's a great why. Why number 2? Rome hated the Jews, hated the Jewish religion. They especially hated this brand new branch of the Jewish religion, this sect called Christianity. Because, they wanted everybody to understand they were the power, their emperor was God, and they wouldn't hear any other kind of stuff. And this Christianity thing is just taken off. And so they got to find a way to stop it. And the main guy that's accomplishing this wildfire of Christianity across the globe is Paul. So let's throw that cat in prison, chain him up so he can't do that anymore, and we'll put a stop to that. It completely backfired. It absolutely, completely backfired because these young Roman soldiers, they're palace guards, they are chained to Paul 24/7. And I don't know how long the shifts were, 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 20, I don't know. But what do you think Paul was doing to those guys when he's chained to them the whole time? And they can't go, he's not captive, they're captive. They can't go anywhere. They can't do anything about this. And guess what he's doing? He's telling them about Jesus. And guess what happens when he tells them about Jesus? They become believers. And so the one place that Paul can't go is in Rome. And he doesn't have to because of his imprisonment. That's the what. The why is, well, look what it says. It's become known throughout the whole imperial guard. Everybody in the palace soldiers, and to all the rest, that my imprisonment is for Christ. My imprisonment, why my imprisonment? It's for Christ. Paul's problem isn't about Paul. It's about Jesus. Prison was to stop the gospel, and just the opposite happened. It's become known, he said. It's become known to everybody. Everybody knows now. It's like Paul kind of like, you know what? I'm pretty well known. I'm kind of a big deal now because everybody knows me and they know what I believe and I'm telling all that. And because they know me, they know Jesus and they have found Jesus and he is becoming glorified. And the church is exploding in places that it could never go before because of my imprisonment. That's a bad what? That's a big problem. But Paul's figured out the why. And that's what he's trying to teach us to do. Number 3. Why number 3, verse 14. And most of the brothers, having become confident by the Lord. These are the people back in those baby churches. Most of those brothers have become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment. These baby Christians are growing in faith because their leader's in jail. By my imprisonment, they're much more bold to speak the word without fear. Their leader is in prison. They need to shut up or they're going to go to prison too, but that's not what happens. They become bold. He says they become fearless. Remember God's calling on Paul's life? It's a big problem now, this jail thing. He can't do that calling. But that's exactly what's happening because he's in jail. That's the why. Man, this is a beautiful thing, man. This is an amazing thing. Church, I'm going to tell you, sometimes we endure hardship because of Jesus. And so that he might be glorified. I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying you like it. But it's the truth. I told you about a time in my life where my faith was almost destroyed. About 30 years ago. And I was the angriest at God that I'd ever been in my life. And I'm going to tell you the story because I think there's a good lesson in it. My wife and I were, we had 4 little kids. And I was the only person on staff, minister at this small church. And because it's a small church, I have a small salary. And I didn't even know that all these assistance things were available, just out of ignorance. So we're just trying to make it work on this super small salary. But we had also committed when we got married to tithing, which means we would give every paycheck that we ever got, No matter what it was for, we would give 10% of it back to the church. And so when we did all that, each week we had the cash and the envelope system, if anybody remembers that before Dave Ramsey. We did the cash and the envelope system. When we did all that, we had $7 left over every week. And so no matter what came up, if it was more than $7, we're in trouble. No matter what happened, if we needed a new one of these or whatever, we were in trouble. We had $7 every week. And usually I'd spend 5 of it on a pizza. But anyhow. The problem with us at that point was we had an old, dying Dodge Caravan minivan. It had 160,000 miles on it. And those things, I hope I don't offend anybody if you're a Dodge guy, but they didn't last long. And mine had 160,000 miles on it, and it was badly in need of several different kinds of repairs. But also, our church was growing, and we had tried some things to make extra space and dual services and all that, but the children's ministry was way overcrowded. There's a few of you here who remember all this. The children's ministry was way overcrowded. We didn't have any place to fellowship. It was all way too small. The auditorium was all way too small. And so if we're going to keep growing, and that is my passion, not to grow a church, but to see people come to Christ, if we're going to keep growing, we got to build another building. And so we talked to some people, brought in some consultants to figure out how to do that and what to do. It's going to cost almost $1 million back then, almost $1 million. And I don't know what that would be today, but a lot more. Oh my gosh, how in the world are we going to do that? And so this consultant said to me, he said, okay, you are the minister here, you're the leader here, you are going to have to do this fundraising thing. And here's what you need to do. Randy, you need to be a huge giver for this. You got to be a huge giver for this because everybody will know if you're not. And you won't talk with passion. You won't talk with purpose unless you are invested in this. And everybody's going to know. And I said, I got $7 every week, Wow. And he said, here's what I want you to do is pray about it. Just start asking God what he wants you to do. Because this would be for a 3-year period, money that you would give over a 3-year period to try to get this thing up and running. And I prayed for weeks, and I got nothing from him. And one day, I'm driving on Dayton Brant Road. If anybody knows where that is, I can take you to that spot where I was right here at God. I wasn't even thinking about this. Wasn't praying. God said, give $10,000. And I about wrecked. What? I get $7 a week left over. How in the world am I going to give $10,000 here, Lord? And it was so strong and so certain that I knew it was from him. I knew it was his voice. I knew it was the Spirit. And so I was afraid of that, but even more afraid of going home and telling Cindy. This is going to be a problem because she is like crushing every dollar. She shops with coupons. And remember when Aldi's was the dirty cheap store? That's I'm talking about that era. And man, it just didn't seem possible at all. And so I go home and she's there. And she said, before I can say anything, she said, hey, I want to talk to you. I got something to say. I said, well, I got something to say too. You go ahead. Maybe Jesus will come before I have to. She said, I've been doing some figuring, and if we can, she said, here's what we'll do. I'm going to cut back on groceries some more. We're going to do very little for Christmas and the kids, and we're not going to do new school clothes. We're just going to have to make do with what we have. And she said, if we do all that over this much each month, we can make a car payment. And so for the next 3 years, does anybody want to guess what the math was? $10,000, exactly, $10,000. And I said, oh man, $10,000. And so after she told me that, I told her what God had told me. And it was $10,000. And so we decided, okay, well, we'll do all that, and we'll just make it this commitment that we're going to have for building the building. So we did. And we had to bring the kids in, and they were little, back before kids cared that much about money. And we said, hey, this is the way it's going to be for the next 3 years. And this is why. Because we think God's going to do something big and powerful in our community, and we're going to be a part of it. We get to watch what he does. And they were all on board with it, my kids were. So that was pretty cool. And so we made that commitment, and that's what we did. The one thing I said to the Lord about it was, you got to keep that old car running. Because we're in trouble if you don't. You got to make that beat-up old car run for 3 more years. And he kept it running for a week. Transmission went out. And I think I remember it was like $2,000 to get it fixed. And we had no vehicle, none whatsoever. And we got kids in school, and I'm working. So I rented a car, and I still remember paying $32 a day for a car. And I mean, it just messed me up bad. So I go into the office the next day, it's a work day, and I am so angry and so mad at God, I couldn't even sit down at my desk. I had a little tiny office that was like 3 paces, but I walked back and forth. And I started on a rant, and I said, God, you lied to us. You lied. You told us that if we tithe, you would bless us, and we're not being blessed. We've been faithfully tithing for a decade, and you get us into this mess. And the more I talked about it, the angrier I got. And I said, God, you promised, and so we can't trust you anymore. You don't keep your promises, God. You lie to people, God. And here's what else you've done. You have me as a teacher for some of my friends out there and some of my family out there, and you have me lying to them. And I'm not going to lie to him anymore because what you said isn't true. And by the way, what else in here isn't true? And I'm just going off. I probably, should have been hit by lightning. I was so mad and so angry, and I'm just pacing it. I did it for a couple hours, and I never stopped. I was so angry, so mad, and my phone rang in the middle of that. And so I picked it up, and typically I'm very professional, and I would say, hello, Lake Avenue Christian Church, this is Randy, how can I help you? And this time I went, what? I'm not kidding. That's what I did. I said, what? And the guy on the other end, he goes, are you okay? And I said, no. And he said, I knew that. And I said, how did you know that? He was an auditor for a large bank, and he traveled, did auditing, in this region. He said, I've been in Toledo all night at a hotel, and I can't sleep because God's telling me to send you $10,000. Man, I'm going to cry right here, man. And I said, okay. and then I still couldn't sit down. But you know what I was doing this time? Who is this God? Who is this God that can do something like this? Who is this God that we serve? Who is this powerful God? Who is this God? Who are you, God? And I praised him, and I went out in the auditorium where we worship as a church, and I'm just praising him. And I'm going on for like an hour, and then it's lunch. I always go home for lunch. I don't miss lunch. So I go home, and I'm telling Cindy, and she sits across the table from me, and we both like, who is this God? It just absolutely blew us away what he had done for us in that. Well, a couple of days later, we got a check in the mail, and we went and bought a van. That was the coolest vehicle we've ever owned. Really, really cool. Captain's chairs, bed in the back, little tiny TV, and a VCR. Remember how those, and the kids all had headphones, and they were just blown away. We had so much joy. My family had so much joy. And I told the church about that the following week. And the church had so much joy. And word got out so that whenever some church was like going through some kind of a campaign, they said, hey, let's get Randy Warner to come and tell that story. So I'm in all these different churches telling this story again and again, and they would have joy, and I would have joy all over again. And it just never stopped, man. It just never stopped because, man, I was screaming and mad and angry. There's a faith crisis in my life. That's a problem. And that's what I was looking at. God's not trustworthy. And I can look back on it now and see the why. And this joy is unspeakable. And I'm going to tell you something, man. I love telling you about it today. I love telling you about it today. And it gives me joy to tell you again because I want you to know when you look at the why, God is up to something. God is doing something, and you need to be ready for it. Get off of that what, man. Get off of that what and get on the why and see what he will do. And then, man, have some joy. Guess what happens when we have joy in the Lord? We are strong, right? Isn't that what we saw at the beginning of this? Nehemiah. So I got to go back and tell my kids about all that. And they're out in the van. They're jumping up around inside the van. It's just sitting in the driveway. I still remember my son was When we all finally, all the excitement wore off, we're back in the house. He's sitting outside. The windows are all. He's a little kid, and anytime somebody would walk past our sidewalk, hey, you want to see the van that God gave us? And he would tell them to come, and he'd show them the TV in there, So he witnessed to people that I don't even know their name through this whole event. But I learned the hard way, kind of a shameful way. God's always faithful. God's always faithful. And I saw him, because I focused on the what, as unfaithful. But then I saw the why. And it got me all kinds of joy, including a crazy cool vehicle. I can say with Paul, what happened to me served to advance the gospel. In my heart, in my life, in my families, in our churches, in the churches in the area, and maybe even today, 30 years later, at Restoration Park Church. I didn't make up one thing here, man. I told you nothing but truth through this whole story. He positioned us in some pretty stark poverty to have joy, have absolute joy. You'll never know what that did to my faith and how it helps me look at my problems now. I can look for the why, and I trust in the why, and I trust that there is one, because God will blow you away with his faithfulness. Maybe it's a real hard journey, maybe some real difficult steps getting there, but take your eyes off the what, church, and look at the why. I wonder, right now, what God might be doing through your problems. I know you got them. I know you do. I wonder what God might be doing through your problems. And I also know why you're focused on the what. It's so hard and scary and fearful and anxiety-driven. And our responses aren't good often, just like mine wasn't. But I wonder what the why is for you. And I wonder if you can take your eyes off of all that what and start looking for the why. What is God doing? What has God done? And will Christ be glorified? Will Christ, some of you have gone through some awful, awful things, much worse than what I did. Can Christ be glorified in your what? Absolutely. Absolutely, he will. I want us to look at James chapter 1, verse 2. He says, consider it pure joy. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. What? Hey, you know what? This just makes me feel good. I think that's what I was saying. Consider joy when you face trials of many things, because you know that the testing of your faith, that's what I went through, produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete and not lacking anything. Church, that's joy. That's joy. Perfect, complete, mature, and not lacking anything. That's joy. Here's the way I'd like us to close. Would you stand up, please? And I'm going to suggest that everybody who's standing probably has a problem or two or 6 or 12. And I'm asking you to stand as just being willing to identify, yeah, that's me. I do have some. And I'm not going to ask you to come up front. I'm not going to ask you to tell anybody about it. I'm not going to ask you to have someone come and lay hands on you or anything like that. I'm not going to do that. But here's what I'm going to ask. Can we be the church in this way? You know what, I didn't talk about this earlier, probably should have. Paul, at the beginning of that Philippians passage, I want you to know. I want you to know. And then all the things that we just talked about, I want you to know. I want you to know too. I want you to know. Get this in your brain, church. Get this in your brain. that we don't have to focus on the why or on the what. We can focus on the why. And so here's what I want to encourage you to do. If you're standing, you probably got some issues, so that means the people around you probably have some kind of issue and could use some prayer. And we're going to sing a song of blessing. We're going to sing a song that is a prayer. And I'm going to ask you if you will pray for the people that are around you. And maybe you're close enough, or maybe you feel led to go put a hand on the shoulder. Maybe you don't. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I think that would all be good because we're praying for each other. It's not the prayer team praying for you. We're praying for each other. We are the church. And so we're going to sing this song of worship, but it's also a prayer of blessing that comes on you. And so your job is, while we're singing this song, these words will move you. I promise these words will move you. And I want you to hear them and pray for the people that might be beside you or behind you, in front of you. And that means that you get prayed for too. Do you understand? Can we all do this? Let's do this. Let's be the church. Let's seek God. Let's forget about the what. Let's look on the why for the people around us and pray for each other as we worship and we lift up our God.